Welcome to LaunchPod, where we chat with innovators who are overcoming challenges, pushing boundaries, and collaborating to make space more accessible and sustainable for humanity, one launch at a time.
It's one small step for man.
Here's your host, Susan Wise.
Hi, thanks. And joining us here on LaunchPod, space, science, and innovation. And this time we have someone with us that knows a lot about those three things. Charles Armstrong is a retired NASA veteran, 45 years experience at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, my old stomping grounds, including roles as flight controller, astronaut trainer, and project manager, an expert on extravehicular activity, EVA, or like spacewalks. Charlie has worked as a spacesuit consultant and currently serves as a member of NASA's EVA and Human Surface Mobility Standing Review Board. So welcome to the show.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. And that's not even scraping the surface because I was all these awards and accolades. You've had an amazing career and still do.
It's kind of fun. Yeah.
Well, I just want to let everybody kind of know how we know each other because we've known each other since I was probably barefoot pigtails riding my bicycle in Missouri. Because Charlie went to high school with my sister, and you guys went all through school in Missouri together.
Yeah.
And so, because I followed my sister around everywhere, that's how I got to know who you were and how special you were. And I was telling her about the podcast, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you should have Charlie on there." So that's kind of how we got to this point.
That's nice. Thank you for inviting me.
And, going back to our high school years, when I was in high school, I remember this was like in the late 70s. I think it was 79. I was a cheerleader, and a local radio station invited us to the parking lot, and they had this big party, and we had to write cheers about Skylab crashing to Earth.
Oh, man.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember Skylab. I was a summer intern at the Johnson Space Center that we call it splatdown.
I want to start by asking you about what you're currently working on to further the space industry.
NASA has the Artemis program. Artemis program is the program to get us back to the moon and ultimately on to Mars. And it consists of three parts, one of which is behind me over here. That's the Orion spacecraft. That's the part that carries people to the moon. Then we have the Space Launch System, the SLS, that's the big rocket. And then there's a human lander that will land people on the moon. My role right now as a consultant is on what's called the Standing Review Board for basically lunar surface EVA and lunar surface transportation. We have right now 3 contractors developing unpressurized lunar terrain vehicles, rovers, and the Japanese are going to provide the pressurized rover, and people will be able to live in that for like up to 30 days at a time. And so that's what I'm doing. I go in and we look at a lot of documents, go to a lot of meetings, and sit there and,
Shake your head.
knowingly, we call it gray beards for a reason.
So it's sort of like an RV on the moon.
Oh, yeah. The pressurized rover is definitely an RV on the moon.
Okay.
And it's big.
Okay.
It's a big boy. And
Wow.
it'll carry 2 people around, like I said, for up to a month, driving around the lunar surface places and doing whatever we're going to do. And so, one of the parts of this as well is the new suit, because we have been using the same spacesuit since the beginning of the shuttle program. And I can't say it's showing its age, because if you ever see one of these things, they look just like they're brand new out of the shop. But it's got some little problems. And it's not really designed to be a walking suit like you're going to go walking on the lunar surface. It's actually designed for zero gravity. And so that means that it's designed so that you actually translate around like the space station or the space shuttle using your hands. And the only thing you use your feet for is we have things called foot restraints that you'll slide your feet into that anchors you down so that you don't float off when you're trying to use a wrench or whatever. So that's the big thing. And I've always been fascinated.
Is it more comfortable?
Hopefully. that's part of the challenge of the whole thing, because now in zero gravity, you and the suit don't weigh anything. You have mass, but you don't have weight. And so, I mean,
Okay.
you can rub on things as you're moving and things like that. But with a lunar surface suit, it's sitting on your shoulders by and large. Now, these are fairly stiff, so you can walk. And so a lot of the weight can also be transferred down through the, what we call the upper torso. That's the chest area and that kind of thing, down to the pants part, so that it's not just all on your shoulders, but you are lugging this thing around. So, we'll see. It can be quite massive. And so even at 1.6G, it's gonna weigh something, and literally it'll weigh something in gravity.
So will we explore parts of the moon that we have not seen yet
Oh,
or
yes.
looked at?
The target's the lunar South Pole, and we've barely seen it. We've had a couple of unmanned landers that have landed near the lunar South Pole. It's pretty dark down there because the moon doesn't have much of an axial tilt. It's pretty much straight up and down relative to the sun. Okay. The Earth tilts at 23.5 degrees. Okay. And that's why we have seasons and that kind of thing. And the moon, of course, only rotates one time a month, one revolution. And so that's why it's same face always faces the Earth. So basically, when you're at the lunar South Pole, the sun is skimming the horizon the entire month that you might be up there, around in a circle.
Okay.
And it never gets more than twilight. And you don't have atmosphere to scatter the light, and so the shadows are really, really dark and really, really cold and that kind of thing, which is one of the reasons we want to actually go there, is because we think that in some of these places, it's always in shadow and there's water in the bottom of these, like craters and things like that. And if you can have water in a place, we don't then have to necessarily haul it with us, which is a big logistics help for trying to keep people alive in a place like the moon. We recycle
right. Well,
water
that
all
makes
the time
sense.
on the ISS.
Right. I think I know where that comes from.
Yes, exactly. Today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee.
Exactly.
You also get it from the atmosphere, because we do, when we respire, we put a lot of humidity or water vapor into the atmosphere. And so we have ways of collecting that as well. But then all gets processed.
That's amazing. Are there any of those things, like those uses, that have an effect of things back here on
Oh,
Earth?
absolutely.
And
In
things
fact, the recycling
utilized.
thing for water. NASA developed some fairly inexpensive water treatment systems that have been deployed in third world countries to help them with unsanitary water.
Wow, that's
Yes,
amazing.
it's very nice. And for more about that, you can go online and look up benefits of the International Space Station, and you will find a whole bunch of stuff about things like that.
Well, this is exciting. When is this moon launch? Have they set
That's
a
always
date
a
for
good
this?
question. So Artemis 2, okay, we had Artemis 1 a couple of years ago, which was sending the unmanned Orion spacecraft around the moon for a couple of weeks. And Artemis 2 is supposed to come up next spring at this point. Basically, the rocket's
Okay.
being built and the Orion spacecraft's being built, all that kind of stuff. And we'll take a crew around the moon and for a couple of weeks. And it won't be like in Apollo where you're going to go in orbit, low lunar orbit, rather, about 60 miles above the surface. It'll be actually out several thousand miles, but they'll see parts that we haven't seen before. And just to try out the Orion systems and make sure that they're good for everything. And then a couple years after that, and it's all about fun. But a couple years after that,
You're
I'm
right.
assuming that Elon gets his Starship to work and become a lander, because he's got the first contract for Artemis 3 to provide a lunar lander, and it's based on his Starship version. So it's going to be a big thing, landing on the south pole of the moon. And so that's the third part that's got to come into play here. And we'll see. So we're talking 2028, someplace between 2028 and 29, probably, for landing people back on the moon.
Yeah. I have Tom Hanks in my ear going, you know, when will we return to the moon and who will it be?
Oh,
You know, and you just felt like we haven't been,
Well, we
you
haven't
know,
done that,
been doing anything.
but
Right.
the ISS is there. You know, it's still clicking along.
So what has been your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
So the first half of my career, I worked in extravehicular activity, spacewalks, doing flight control, and this was in the early shuttle program. Now, back in those days, getting the spacesuit, what we call the EMU, the extravehicular mobility unit, that consists of the big white spacesuit plus its backpack, and has a life support. But getting that thing to work for very long was always a challenge. And so the very first time we were supposed to perform an EVA, an STS-5, it didn't work. Neither suit would perform like they were supposed to. We couldn't get out the hatch. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was in the control room. It was the first time there. Long story with how that ended up happening that way. But it was just an embarrassment. And I swore it'd never happen again. So maybe this is one of my biggest challenges. So by and large, that never happened again. However, in the process of going through that about, you know, how can I get one of these suits out the hatch under really adverse conditions where things aren't working right. How can I work around everything and all this kind of stuff? It's the job of the flight controller to figure that. And so for years, I had championed the idea that worst case, we had one of the things, there's several things to go on with the EMU. One is if something goes wrong, it would ring an alarm. And you had a little display in the front of the suit sitting on this little box that's sitting right there on the front. It's just a 12-character display, and it gives you your error messages. You know, if something goes wrong, O2 use high, that's a bad one. You know, O2 use high means
That's a bad one.
You know, suit P low, that's a bad one. You've got this display. You've got a gauge that shows your suit pressure, which is kind of a backup to that. You got the bell that rings, that kind of thing. And you always have a watch, so you know what time it is. And forever, I said, all I need to go outside and keep a crewman safe is a watch and a gauge and the tone, the warning tone. The other thing we had going for us is every 2 minutes, we would get 30 seconds of data. We're not data rich like the rest of the shuttle, the rest of the ISS. You barely get any information out of the EMU. We don't have that many sensors. Our bandwidth is very low on getting the stuff. As long as I had those things going for me, you could go do an EVA and not sweat it. On STS-49, that's the one where one of the things that they did there, you may have seen pictures where you have 3 guys out in the payload bay of the shuttle holding on to a really big satellite. Okay? That was STS-49. And we had another EVA that happened after that, doing some EVA demonstration things, actually in preparation for building the International Space Station. And I was not a prime flight controller. I was working the planning shift for that flight. And they were supposed to, I'd done the planning stuff. I'd gone home, gone to bed, and I got a call in the middle of my night where it was a guy from the safety office saying, do you know what's going on right now? And I'm like, no, because I've been sleeping. And Kathy Thornton had gone out and she had lost her display. And the safety guys were all concerned over this because how is she going to know? And Richard, who was the EVA flight controller on console, he said, all I need is a watch and a gauge. And I was very gratified about that. And we did that whole EVA with a watch and a gauge and a warning tone so that we know to look for something. Because if you got the warning tone, you'd look at the gauge. That's the most important thing. If that gauge starts going down on you, you know you have a leak, and that's going to be pretty much the most important thing. Everything else you can hear or feel or something else is going on. You really don't need to worry about it that one. So anyway, that was very gratifying that all that stuff we had done in the past convinced everybody up. And so I went in, called Richard, said, I'm going to go to the safety guys' room, and I'm going to sit with them and hold their hand, while they worried about this. And told him, this is exactly right. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. And it was all very successful.
Was that your aha moment?
I guess it was certainly gratifying. It was
Well, it's very exciting, and we have a lot of exciting things coming, and it's just amazing the innovation and how, getting people together. And I think that's one great thing about other businesses become involved with the program is the innovation and being able to share. And I think that pushes us forward quicker.
Yeah. One thing you were asking about has been beneficial. One of the things that's interesting is back in the good old days, was if you wanted to do space business, you're going to be either a NASA, right? Hire on at NASA, or you could be one of our support contractors. And, there were still a number of people doing that. But now we've got all these companies out there, little fledgling. You can come in right on the ground floor. You got, if you're any good, you've got all these companies out there that are doing some kind of space. I mean, we've got new people launching rockets. We got people building landers. There's just all sorts of stuff going on in space. So it's not just, the only thing you can be is a NASA guy anymore. There's a ton of SpaceX guys, Blue Origin guys, Axiom Space, you name it. There's all sorts of opportunities if somebody wants to become involved in space, that they can become involved in space now. That's kind of cool.
Well, I've sure enjoyed our time, Charlie.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast.
And thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to leave us a review and subscribe. And until next time, keep looking up.
Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on social media. Stars Launch Pod, propelling us forward, one launch at a time.